Yo, what is going on, guys? We're back here with another client success interview. And today we have Alejandra Villa out from Miami. Probably one of my favorite students I've ever worked with just because she's so good at listening and executing. And because of that, we took her business from averaging 5K a month to now 14, 16. We're probably going to push it even further. Over the last 6 months, we've been able to build her team with an assistant coach, with a part-time salesperson, and also just allowed her to grow in skill. But Ale, welcome. Why don't you give people a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, what your life looks like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I was born in Miami, like Zach said. I got into the fitness world. I mean, I've always kind of been into fitness. I've always been like active my whole life. I was either like dancing or I was doing like playing volleyball in high school. However, then I guess I started to try to make like a platform for myself. And so I started posting my workouts and, I got a little bit of a following going, which was nice. And then based off like experience and then based off my personal experience working with other coaches, I found myself that I knew I was passionate about health and fitness. So I was like, why not try and make this a career? So I was pursuing like a health and fitness career while also in school for something completely different. I ended up graduating with my master's in information systems. I gave myself about 6 months. I already had a, big four accounting job lined up for myself, but I gave myself about 6 months to just kind of try and scope out like what I could do with my platform, with coaching, with all that kind of thing. And, by the end of the 6 months, I realized that it was actually really profitable. And, I decided to essentially just follow my passion. And ever since that day, I have probably never looked back. And I always say that that was probably the best decision that ever could have happened.
How long ago was that?
So it was actually about a year ago, almost today. So my Big Four accounting firm role was supposed to start in July of 2022, and it is June 2023. So it's been a full year that I've been graduated and just like full on grinding in the fitness space.
I love it. Did you ever step into like the corporate world or was it like an
I didn't.
internship? Oh, actually, I should know this. Your Zoom picture is a picture of you, like it's like a resume picture. That's funny. What about that? Because you've went so far down that journey, graduating college, getting the job, going into the job. At what point did you decide like, okay, this isn't for me. I need to go step into coaching?
So, I mean, I had done a couple internships with the company that I ultimately got the role for. Because of COVID, it was a little bit different because we were doing it via Zoom, but the material itself wasn't something I was passionate about. It was something I was definitely good at because I studied it in school, but I never, it was like I was always trying to not necessarily cut corners, but, I just like I didn't find myself like working till late hours because I genuinely wanted to. It was always like I was looking at the clock to try to, get off as soon as possible or do what I needed to do and, get out of there. I think like the turning point for me of when I was like, okay, like I'm going to just go full on into fitness and, pursue coaching full time was that 6 month mark where I was like, okay, I'm making at that point, the same amount of money that I was being offered by this like corporate job. So I'm probably working less hours. I'm doing something I love. Why would I ever go back to that? And it was really hard because I've always been really academically driven. Like I've always taken APs and I was always in the advanced classes and I literally got my master's. Like I was always very academically driven, very, like on the ball with, just like interviews and all of this, like same thing, like this, like academic, all this academic world. But I think, like I said, like making that decision of working for myself, setting my own schedule, and just the fact that I literally like fully, like, I don't mind working till 10 p.m. if I need to because I genuinely love what I do versus same thing. If it was like in the corporate world, like I'm sure I would have my late nights, but I would probably not enjoy them as much as I do now. And that's not to say that there's not redundant work in fitness coaching or in the fitness space. It's different. You actually have a passion for it. So even the redundant stuff is still enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. What did your parents say when you decided that you were going to go full time in your coaching business?
I mean, they weren't against it. I think like the good thing was that I had something to show for it. So it wasn't just like, oh, mom and dad, like I'm not taking this job. And I always say, like, if I wasn't in a position to where I could have comfortably at that point relied on going full time into fitness, I do think I probably would have been still trying to juggle like the corporate world with doing fitness on the side until I got to a point where, I could potentially make a means off of fitness and then grow from there. But I mean, personally, I very calculated with my risks. So I was never going to just be like, like let's start from scratch and see where we go. I always wanted to have a plan A and a plan B. So that was what I did. And like I said, it worked out for me. But if it didn't, I would have eventually just followed maybe the corporate route for a little bit, but obviously still tried to grow my fitness thing on the side.
Absolutely. I love it. I'm definitely the opposite approach. I'm freaking, I know what I want. I'm going to go straight for it and I'll figure out how to get there just by trial and error. Let's go back to the beginning of your fitness business. I know you had built up a social media following in college. I actually followed you for a very long time. You went to UF, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Yeah, I was friends with you through Alexi and then also Jen too. So tell me about your first client. How did you get it? You said you gave yourself 6 months to get the business up to a point to where you can quit. So like, what do those first 6 months look like?
Yeah, so I already had started, like I said, like doing coaching in college. When I would do my internships, that was something that I probably could have gone about a little bit better. I expected the workload to be very heavy, so I stopped taking on clients. So by the time I started my internship to by the time I ended it, my client roster had gone down a lot. So I had to kind of almost not restart, but I was definitely starting from almost ground zero. What was the question again?
Just take us back to the beginning of your coaching business.
Okay.
How did you get your first client? How did you get your first 5 clients? How did you get your first 10 clients? How did you make your first $1,000 month?
Yeah, so I started, like I said, like I started off with friends because I felt like I didn't want to just kind of come out and be like, oh, I'm starting coaching business without like really having tested my methods on anyone. I also at the same time was also investing in a mentor, more of like an accelerator program that really broke down the like kind of like how to of what platforms to use, what systems, what strategies, which ultimately like really was just like a plug and play solution for me of like what it is that I needed to do. And all I really had to do at that point was focus on actually coaching the girls, which was nice. But basically from there, same thing, kind of, putting out consistent content, making sure that I was giving content with value, making sure that, my program as a whole was giving a lot of value, not just like the coaching, but also the educational aspect of like including like a 12-week course if you want, or resources, or just I wanted it to be a little bit more in depth than, oh, I'm just giving you a training program and macros. And I think that that really has helped as far as just like getting people in, but also allowing for people to just kind of stay and finish their journey all throughout, to the point where I get a lot of girls that do leave the program and they're like, and they're killing it. Maybe they came in not even knowing what a macro is, to consistently tracking their macros and being able to like manage their protocols on their own. Right. So that really, it's like good to see. And I think as long as you just keep providing value to people, whether it's free or whether it's paid, like people will come and they will come to you for advice. And again, you can ultimately grow your audience that way.
I love it. Yeah, there's something I can tell a lot about you is that you actually really give a fuck about your product. You really care and make sure that your product is good, your course is good, that the client ascension is great too. Where do you think that comes from? Because obviously you get really juiced and excited when girls are, leaving the program, with skill sets that they can take with you. So did you have a personal journey where, fitness made a big impact in your life, or, where does that come from?
Honestly, I do feel like maybe that had to do a little bit with like academics. Like I said, like I've always been in fitness and like I've seen like how much of a positive effect it's had on me. However, I've always feel like I've always tried to excel in whatever it is that I did. So like in academics, like I said, like I was always in advanced classes, like I was always involved in different organizations. I was in student government, I was in this and I was in that. I do think it was kind of just like intrinsic at that point, like from me.
Yeah, you're just driven to be the best.
I mean, I definitely like being good at what I'm doing. And I feel like even especially as an entrepreneur, like you're always gonna find little things that you could probably be better at. And again, it's just that intrinsic motivation to continue getting better and better, to continue just serving more people, providing more value, etc.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic thing. It's based on the conversations I have, because I have conversations with tons of other students. I can really tell that you care about your product. So I think that's advantage that you have. I also know too that you do have your another foot dipped into the influencer space as well. You got sponsorships, you have brands. Would you be able to do a crash course difference on what the difference between being an influencer, quote unquote influencer, versus a coach? What are the differences there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's different types of influencers. Like I've definitely maybe fallen into maybe sometimes like posting a picture, like a reel or whatever that really doesn't provide a lot of value. And I think that that's kind of like the main shift that my content took, was like it's not like I'm just like I might post like a good picture of myself or whatever, like what I'm doing, but I think like if you read my captions, like you actually get something from my captions versus me just putting some emojis and like posting the picture, like just for an aesthetic look. Like I mean, obviously aesthetics matter in the world of obviously that like your profile is the first thing that people see. So you obviously want to make it look good. But I think like, yeah, you can attract people with the aesthetic, but you make people stay with the value. So I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, because I know that a lot of people who are looking to start a coaching, they don't exactly see the other side of what the business looks like. And they think that in order for you to be a coach, you have to have a lot of followers. I'm like, if in order for you to be an influencer, it makes sense to have a lot of followers, but you don't need a lot of followers to be a successful coach. The business and how influencers versus coaches make money is very, very different with like brand sponsorships, things like that. So I think it's important to highlight that.
Yeah, I also think that like you want to essentially have quality over quantity because essentially you could be someone that has 500,000 followers, but if 90% of your following is male and you are like hosting a female driven like coaching opportunity, you're not going to be as successful as maybe you think you are. So appealing to the audience that you ultimately want to attract is also going to be important as well.
God, I hear that all day long about how big of a problem those males are in the fucking as the following is male. I know that's a big setback. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. I know when you came to PTBI, you had already gone through a few mentorships programs. You were already, on the ball, but you were stuck around 5K to 8K a month. You have some big months, you'd have some low months, but there just wasn't any consistency. And then we were able to break you through 10K, you have 14K. I think you're pushing, how did it may end up for you?
Like 15, yeah.
Perfect. What made the difference for you? Like what made you finally break through that plateau?
I think for me specifically in my business, like the biggest bottleneck for me was sales. We completely kind of revamped my whole sales system as far as like how many calls I was taking with someone, like what I was actually saying on the call, what value I was providing versus what I was doing before was just kind of, I don't know, like I was trying to be like
We
on the call, like
we call it product presenting. What you do is you
I would start talking about we would just like go off on a tangent and I'd be talking about like gym clothes with the girl on the call and whatever. And to the point where like maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes had gone by and I hadn't even, talked about what the purpose of the call was or,
that
like just trying to like warm up to them. And I guess, I mean, there's definitely method to the madness in terms of like getting that closing percentage up and really being direct in a nice way. I think that was always something that really resonated with me is like, I never wanted to come off salesy. I didn't want it to be like, hey, we're here. I'm selling you a product. Do you want it or not? Because at the end of the day, same thing. Like when you care about the value and you care about the impact that it's going to make on the person, like, yeah, obviously sales are important, but you also need to convey that value to them because there's people that'll hop on the phone and they actually need the product. Like they actually want the change. They've been seeking that change. And so if you're not able to convey your program in a way that is going to like get that point across to them, then you're wasting each other's time essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good thing to point out too. Like no matter how much quote unquote rapport you build, doesn't mean it's going to lead to a sale at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm super stoked. I'm glad that we were able to help with your sales and it sounds like you're getting more and more confident with that too. I also know that we brought in an AC and, brought in a couple team members. How does it feel now that you have a bigger growing, team?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I think like when we brought on those team members, I was definitely wearing a lot of different hats and I was definitely very overwhelmed. But I think now that I do have those team members on board, it's a lot like there's a lot less work technically on my end. However, it's not like I'm just doing nothing with that time. It's like I can now kind of better manage those team members. I can now kind of manage and overlook, how are my clients doing? Check up on like just like back end of the business things that maybe I didn't have time for before because I was so busy doing, client check-ins, I was doing sales calls, I was wearing all these different hats. So it definitely buys you some time back, but that doesn't mean that, you're just kind of sitting and doing nothing. Like you should still be pouring in that time to your business.
I love that. Well, with that being said, what do you think the next steps are for your business? I know we got you to a good point. You're making, 15, I know you're going to be making 20, 30K months here in no time. So what are the next steps? What's that look like for you?
So I guess next steps for me is, well, still like I might have gotten better at sales, but I still feel like I have a long way to go. And like thank Ryan so much. Like he fully gave me like the one-on-one attention that I needed from takeover. He gave me all the resources, the calls that you guys offer, like that helped a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, the work is done and that I'm just good. Like I said, like you always want to try to be like improving in any area that you can. And you're never going to be the best of the best at what you do. So there's always going to be some sort of area of improvement that you can kind of work on. So I think that's ultimately just like the next steps for me is continue learning, continue growing, continue making an impact.
I love it. Where can people find you online?
So on Instagram, I am as at avb.fit. And then TikTok, I am just avbfit. No dot in the middle.
AVB. What is the B for?
So it's actually my full name. It's my initials. It's Alejandra Vila Bernal.
Nice. Okay, awesome. All right. So let's say that someone is looking to start a coaching business. They're looking to build their Instagram. Maybe they're even looking to get some sponsorships, brand deals, but they're, stuck in school. Maybe they're looking at the corporate ladder. What advice would you give if you were to give advice to someone who is in the same situation that you were in?
Yeah, I think you said this saying once, like that the biggest obstacle people have a lot of the time is obscurity, like just not being able to get your name out there as maybe fast or as wide as you'd like to. So the biggest thing is just like engaging with the company, whether it be commenting on their posts, using their products, tagging them, really seeing who are their athletes, supporting them because like we notice that stuff. Like even people with followings, like who is, constantly engaging with you, commenting, messaging you, like those things. And so companies also recognize that as well. And I think the biggest thing to note is like we all, like everyone you see with a big platform or wherever they're at in life, like they were once in your position. I think the only difference between them and that person that, is maybe questioning themselves right now is just the fact that they kept going versus, maybe giving up because it's too hard or because it's too far of a goal, right? You just have to keep going, keep chasing it.
I love it. Ale, thank you so much. Wish you the best.
Thank you.
Cool. Peace.